Really is unreal. You know, I didn't expect him to be such a great passer and a willing passer. And I said something to him yesterday, and he looked at me like, you know, I got it all. And I was like, oh, okay, my fault. So, you know, it was just funny, you know, kind of understanding that, like, you know, he is who he is, and seeing him up close in person, I appreciate his game even more.
Ty Lue wasn't just an assistant coach during your 2008 championship run with the Celtics. He was the coach who specifically worked with you the most. In fact, then head coach Doc Rivers called him the Rondo Whisperer. What is the relationship between the two of you like?
It's fun. You know, I've never played for a coach where, you know, I've actually played with them, or, you know, in the sense in the NBA games, or even, you know, been that close to assistant coach. So me and Lou go way back. About 10 years ago, he actually let me stay in his house in Vegas. So this is our relationship. It's always been tight. He's been a guy that's been always genuine and always been honest with me, even if we're playing cards or gambling. I mean, it's just, you know, this type of guy he is, a great person.
We want what's best for us, and what's best for him is the ability to choose where he goes next.
You are really close with Boogie Cousins. You guys played together in Sacramento and New Orleans. What do you think of what he's got left after seeing him play in Houston?
I think he has a lot left, and I know he has a lot to prove to himself, the league, and he probably wants to prove as many people as wrong as I do for him. I'm hoping for the best. You know, he's one of my dear friends. I was in his wedding this past summer, and you know, I wish him all the best. You know, he's had a tough road to get back to this point where he is.
So let's talk Lakers-Clippers. There's been an edginess between the two teams, certainly since Kawhi and Paul George came to town. You, of course, experienced that from the Lakers side last year. What is it like to flip to the Clippers side now?
It's different. It is a rivalry here in Los Angeles, but for the most part, I've been getting a bunch of, you know, just welcome backs. You know, it's different coming back to LA being a champion, so it hasn't been as brutal as you would think as far as going back from LA to Clippers rivalry, because, you know, Laker fans are still on the high horse as far as, you know, championship ring this past summer. So I'm just looking forward to the competition, getting to learn my teammates as much as possible and competing.
It's funny, we have this Sunday game on ABC, Lakers-Clippers, and even without LeBron or Anthony Davis, you got a lot of spicy matchups there between former teammates on both sides. What do you think that game is going to be like?
It'll be intense. You have competitive guys that were here last year, vice versa, and it'll be an interesting game. You know, two great coaches, two great minds going at each other, and two great teams.
It's going to be a little fun for you because you know those guys so well?
It'll be a lot of fun for me. You know, anytime I like to see my old teammates, old coaching staff, it's all love and fun and competition.
What do you think is the ceiling for this Clippers group?
Championship. I mean, that's it. You know,
you see that?
It's pretty much, you know, what I love is, you know, having that pressure is to see the championship or bust. You know, they've been in the playoffs, but this franchise hasn't won, and that is something I'm looking forward to doing. You know, proving a lot of doubters wrong and going
as the season goes on, because he's not going to get 41 minutes like he did. But you know what he does is allow the Lakers to extend their championship contender status. If you get lucky on some of these young players and they pan out, you can work around the margins a little bit better, because when you're spending so much money on the contracts of Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and then obviously they had to re-up Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and they traded for Dennis Schroeder, and he's making a good chunk of change. You don't have much left to work with, and so to hit on a guy like Talen Horton-Tucker, who they purchased the second-round draft pick from the Orlando Magic to be able to draft him in the middle of the second round a couple years ago. That's so huge. And he's kind of following the same mold that Alex Caruso did for them last year. He was a young player trying to find his way in the league, hungry, and they all fed off that energy. And come Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Alex Caruso is starting. That may be a lofty goal for Talen Horton-Tucker, but certainly he's someone who seems to be ready to be able to contribute all season long.
Absolutely. I think this kid is starting to really gain his confidence. And if you look back at the bubble, Frank threw him in the Rockets series for 2 games, and he played great. So can you imagine what that did for that kid coming into this year saying, my coach believes in me, he's going to give me a chance to compete and play. And now this kid with no pressure on him, with all of these stars, gets injected into the mix. The rich keeps getting richer, right? And now he's around. He's also, this is great what he's doing, but think about who he's playing with now. LeBron makes everybody better. Schroeder is a playmaker. Marc Gasol, one of the best playmaking bigs in the league that can get people buckets. So here they have another big young guard that can defend multiple positions, that can push the pace, and that isn't an offensive liability. So I'm really happy for this kid. I love seeing these kind of stories, and he's going to contribute to their winning this year, I guarantee it.
He does just seem to also have just a maturity. I don't know if part of that was being with the team through the bubble. That was such an intense experience. And you have to remember, too, a big part of why he spent a chunk of last season in the G League was he had an injury that prevented him from being at Summer League.
Right.
So he just got such a slow start to things. I do want to know, though, now that his depth has improved, now that he's improved, now that the depth of the team overall has improved, Dave, how does that impact the team's plans to load manage LeBron and Anthony Davis?
I mean, LeBron has told me that he flat out does not believe in load management. He's told me over and over again, if I'm healthy, I'm playing. And certainly he would have to either come off that stance, change his mind about it, or be a hypocrite if he decides to all of a sudden load manage this year. So we'll see how that works out. The league, even though they still have rules in place where they want to see the stars playing in marquee games, they understand it's the shortest offseason in league history. And so there are some opportunities to rest your guys if you should need it. But, you know, there's a thing, and it's very low on the list of priorities for LeBron in terms of what he wants to accomplish. It's all about winning championships this stage of his career. But I don't think LeBron's just going to rest for the sake of resting, because there is that carrot on a stick where he could catch Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the all-time points list if he continues to play and play enough games while he's healthy. And so, you know, I've always known him to be a guy where, you know, if he's going to get out there and be a part of a regular season, play me. Don't sit me just for the sake of sitting me. And I don't think that's really going to change.
No, he's exactly right about LeBron James. There's no way he's getting low. You know what their load management is going to be this year? Remember Golden State a few years ago just beat the hell out of everybody in the first 3 quarters, and they would be up by 30, and then they never played in the fourth quarter? Welcome to load management for the Lakers. LeBron's not sitting out any games. He's about to make history. What are we talking about
Did you guys try to get him to sit in Miami on certain nights?
Never. That was a moot point. We was like, don't even come at me with that stuff. If a basketball game is being played, we had to beg them to sit out the last game of the first year we had them together in Toronto, because he was just like, nope, I'm not sitting out. There's a game being played, I'm playing. And so that's his attitude. He's like a pickup player. If there's somebody playing at the park, he's playing. And so I think that's the way they're going to manage his minutes, is just by being dominant. And because they have so many different weapons at so many different times, they will be able to sustain dominance throughout the season. Even if a guy goes down or a guy gets tweaked, they won't miss a beat because they're too deep damn near at every single position. So load management, my butt, he is going to play and play well.
Well, it's interesting a little bit in terms of the dynamic on the court, though, because our colleague Brian Windhorst has talked about how LeBron perfected the art of load managing during games sometimes. And by the way, Kawhi Leonard did this too, where wouldn't really maybe all the time getting back on defense, all of that stuff. But that changed last season, Fizz, right? He thought it was so important to set the tone for the rest of the team that last season you saw him play, especially defense, differently than he had in the previous 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
I don't know which LeBron we're going to get during the regular season this year, whether he feels like it is smarter to preserve himself for the playoffs or whether he needs to still be that tone setter all the time, no matter what.
That's just who he is. I just don't see him doing anything different. The way he ended this year, the last year, blocking everybody's shot, chasing people down, he's going to start the year this way. He's a heavyweight fighter that's used to fighting 15 rounds every fight. So he will not get tired. He's gone 9 out of 10 championship runs. He's going to know how to pace himself throughout the season so that he can hold the trophy at.
Performance from the LA Lakers.
That Kyrie Dennis Schroeder ejection proved to be the turning point of the game. The Lakers outscoring the Nets 60-39 after the ejections. LA got hot from 3, hitting 12 of 18. The Nets went cold, 0 for 14. So, Richard, look, you just said, oh, why? Well, there's a really good reason. We expected this game might be a blowout, but it was because LeBron and AD weren't playing. Kyrie and Kevin were, and it was supposed to be a blowout the other way. The Lakers instead won by 25. So do you think, do you put any stock in it?
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to give you guys a heads up. Like, Perk is going to put stock in this. I'm not going to put any stock in this because ultimately these are not the teams that we are expecting to be in the finals. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be 100% when they get to the finals if these two teams are the ones there. But ultimately, you can't really judge anything off a team without LeBron James, without Anthony Davis. Kevin Durant has been back for 3 games. No James Harden and a Kyrie tossed out in a 1-game situation. Yes, this is not what the Nets wanted, but this is not who they are going to be, and it's not the Lakers are going to be.
Well, first of all, Richard, you don't need to be giving us any more heads up because that milk dud is enough head that you're giving us on TV here. All right, that's the first thing. Second of all, yes, Rachel, I am going to put stock in this, and I'm going to look at the Lakers, right? Look at Taylor Horton-Tucker, Kyle Kuzma being out right now, and he's stepping up his game, being able to sharpen his knife and sharpen his skills. Ben McLemore, new addition, being able to come in and light it up from the 3-point line. KCP hasn't been shooting the ball well. So, adding great depth that holds everyone accountable. Well, now KCP is going to have to elevate his game because he's going to have to be looking over his shoulder. Third, Andre Drummond. He abused them in the paint, 20 and 11. Where's DeAndre Jordan right now? I get it. Steve Nash is catering to LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, but the Brooklyn Nets are not going to win a championship without playing DeAndre Jordan. They have to play him. He is their center that's going to anchor their defense. He's the best live threat that they have going to the basket. So where's DeAndre Jordan right now? He damn sure shouldn't be getting DMPs. I tell you that much.
Richard, where are you on that?
Well, no, I agree with that. A lot of times, and I had this one of my last years in Cleveland, where it's like a coach goes to a veteran and said, look, we're going to play these guys. We're going to get them acclimated. We're going to get them more minutes. We're going to come back to you. And I still want to applaud DeAndre because you're right. They're not going to beat a Joel Embiid playing LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin. That's just the truth. It's going to be difficult with a guy like Giannis. Some of these teams in the Eastern Conference, and even if they're fortunate to make it to the finals, which a lot of us are predicting, they have a potential to go against a team like, let's say, the Utah Jazz or like the Denver Nuggets that have a ton of size.
They play Philly this week with a healthy Joel Embiid, so we'll find out
or even the
more
Lakers,
about that.
or even the Lakers, which their dominance is really their size. When you're talking about Kuzma, Braun, you got AD, and you got Drummond. So that size is just so dominating. So, but you got to get these other guys acclimated as quickly as possible. So I'm okay with it, giving these guys a run to see if you can do it, but then dialing it back, saying like, hey guys, this is what we need.
So when they came back, when Lue came back to you, as he said, after getting those guys acclimated, were you able to jump in the same? Was it?
Yes, because my role was still more of just like, hey, we're going to do this and getting ready for Golden State, trying to play, 5 or 6 smalls. But it was more of like, hey, we're going through a coaching change. I want to give these young guys these opportunities, but we're going to come back to you. Stay ready, stay professional, stay in shape. And ultimately he did. They're going to come back to DeAndre Jordan, but understand part of these DMPs is because they need to get minutes for Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge to see what they can offer and what they have.
Yeah.
But
go ahead, Perk.
But Rachel, RJ, it's only 20 games or less left into the season. Chemistry comes to mind, and I get trying to acclimate these guys, but you got to give DeAndre Jordan some minutes so that he could get back accustomed to playing with everyone. Like, I get all that trying to see what Blake could bring to the table and what LaMarcus could bring, but it's only 20 games left. And the biggest concern to me with the Brooklyn Nets is the chemistry.
Well, look, Steve Nash said that he's had to.
The champs had 2 blowout wins this weekend. They beat the Mavs by 23 on Christmas Day. And then the 36-point win against the Timberwolves with Anthony Davis resting a calf strain on the first half of a back-to-back last night. So, Ramona, what impressed you the most about the Lakers this weekend?
I like their new guys. I like the way that Marc Gasol looked, especially last night. He just gives them such a different dimension to the way that they played last year. He's such a great passer. And one of the things that LeBron James always talks about is playing with high IQ players, right? That was why he bonded so well with Rajon Rondo last year. Marc Gasol is exactly that kind of player. And it kind of reminds me, Fizz, you tell me if I'm off base, okay? Kind of reminds me of what Kevin Love did for the Cavs when LeBron was there. Big man who could space the floor, great passer. That outlet pass last night was unbelievable. That's something Kevin would do. And it's just a dimension they didn't have last year that I think opens up a whole other side of their offense.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I even think Mark is another level passer than even Kevin Love. Like, Mark is, he sees the game how LeBron sees the game, but he does it from the center position, and that's what I think makes him so unique for their team. So even LeBron, as we try to watch to see if he's going to age at all, watch how many easy layups and dunks he gets, so his numbers won't look like he's aging at all, because Mark is going to be able to get him easy baskets. Schroeder is going to be able to get him easy baskets, and we got to see that over the course of these games. I think the other thing that really impressed me about them was how they played without AD, and I think that's something that, you know, when I watched the Clippers without Kawhi, watching them without AD, that's going to be the tale of these teams, because somebody's always going to lose a stud. Can they keep the train rolling without that guy? And the Lakers showed that it is important to them to try to win it again. They were disappointed with that one loss, but they came back with a fury over the next 2 games. And I think we saw a picture of what they're going to be all year.
I mean, Marc Gasol in the high post, Fizz, you and I talked about this just last week. I mean, he is unstoppable from there. Like, his vision, his court vision is great. He can play quarterback, honestly. Like, he can fit the ball in such tight windows. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, I'm glad you brought up the thing about LeBron.
7-foot quarterback.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
The thing about LeBron, there's this notion that, well, LeBron needs the ball in his hands and playing with another playmaker is a deterrent. On the contrary, if you look at LeBron's career, even when he was younger, when he had another playmaker around him to make life easier for him, he excelled. You know, whether it was Dwayne Wade, Kyrie Irving, you name it. There's a lot of guys there that move the ball to help him as well. He's obviously as unbelievable a passer as we've ever seen play the game. Him and Magic Johnson are in that conversation. But he certainly benefits from having those kind of guys.
Yeah, and you look at, like, Dwayne used to get you know, length the court stuff when young LeBron wanted to outrun everybody. Now in the half court, Mark is going to be able to get them back cuts, you know, little easy spin outs and things like that that only a Marc Gasol or a Jokic type player can make. Those are the only kind of guys that can make those passes. And the way that Frank runs his offense, where he really gets the other guys to commit to moving without the ball, everything is with energy. Marc Gasol is going to make them so hard to beat as they move forward.
Yeah, and it has unlocked Kyle Kuzma, as we've talked about. Ramona, Kuz has played well with Marc Gasol out there on the floor. Like, he just signed a new extension, and I think that this is – look, if he starts performing like we've seen here in the last game or two, then all of a sudden that thing looks like a steal, doesn't it?
I mean, I thought the contract itself looked like a steal when it was, you know, 3 years, $40 million. I mean, he was – I think he had visions of, you know, 60, 70 million, okay, when they were first talking. So for them to get him at that price, and it also takes away, I think, a lot of the drama around Kyle Kuzma, which was, it was going to be a storyline and a sense of, and a pressure for him and the Lakers all year long, because if they didn't do that extension, he was going to be eligible for restricted free agency. Obviously, there's always tension with him because he sees himself as a starter. Last night he got to start. Okay, he was the guy who went into the starting lineup, and I thought he looked great. He always plays great when he starts because he's got something to prove. But now you can relax a little bit. He got paid. It may not have been as big as what he wanted, but he still is getting $40 million the next 3 years. And I think for Kuz, it lets him settle into whatever role he's going to carve out for himself without every single game being a referendum on, are they going to give him a contract? Is he worth it? How much is he worth?
Right.
All right, another team that turned things around this weekend, the Warriors. Steph Curry led a late comeback over the Bulls with 13 points in the fourth. That set up a huge three from Damian Lee in the final seconds that we saw earlier. So, Coach, it's just one win, but does Curry's hot quarter change your opinion on the Warriors?
Unfortunately, no. You know, I think this is, you know, with Wiseman being the rookie, and it's not to knock him, but without Clay, without Draymond on the court right now, it's this team from last year with a rookie, who was very impressive, by the way, this kid Wiseman. So, but I just think the West is too stacked. It doesn't change their position at all, and until they get healthy, I think they're going to be fighting an uphill battle.
Look, they really miss Draymond Green, George, and I think that he's coming back sooner rather than later. But just his playmaking ability, his passing, his leadership defensively. Wiseman looks good, but he looks a little lost defensively. We've seen some of that in the first few games here. But I think it was good for Steph to get going because he has not shot the ball well until last night. Like, he hasn't had that Steph Curry efficiency, and it's because other teams are making it really hard on him, okay? He's the only one they're worried about, and so he's drawing everybody's best shot. I mean, there's 3 guys on him all the time. But when Draymond's out there, they're going to be a little more balanced. I was wondering what the Warriors would look like this year in terms of, are they a team that goes from 15 wins last year to contending for a 7 or 8 spot in the West? From what we've seen in the first few games, I would say no.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't think that they are looking like anything like a playoff team, but I want to wait on my judgment of them because they have to figure out a whole new way to play. They've got to figure out how to put Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins into spots where they can give them advantages offensively, because so far those 2 guys have looked a little lost in that Warriors offense, and they're spending a lot of money on.
But there were more moves, obviously.
There were?
Let's move on. Yes, there were more moves. Let's move to the West. The other big signing this weekend, Andre Drummond, and the Lakers agreed to a deal for the rest of the season.
Because the Nets were out of roster spots.
Lakers coach Frank Vogel said he expects Drummond to give the team, quote, a big lift in the immediate future. So, Matt, how does the Drummond signing impact the Lakers in the West?
With the trade deadline looming in the buyout market, I think this is the biggest pickup. They needed to fill that void at the center spot. I think people underestimate how important Dwight and JaVale were for this team last year. Their energy, their athleticism, their just ability to plug those little voids. Obviously, signing Marc Gasol, he's never been an athletic guy. He's going to beat you with his mind and his skill, but they needed someone big to out there. Drummond is probably the best rebounder in the game. And I think it's going to be big. But like I said last week, I don't think we're going to see his full potential until you get the stars back. He's not going to come in and be a go-to guy you can load up and get 30 out of every night. That's not his game. I think he's going to plug all the deficiency they had. He's someone that's averaging 18 and 14 without his number being called. So anytime you can add a guy like that to a championship caliber team, it's going to be a plus.
Matt's correct. Like, when you lose, and the Denver Nuggets did it also when they added Aaron Gordon and they added JaVale, because they lost Plumlee and they lost Jeremy Grant, and they're like, yo, we need those 2 things, and they went out and got those 2 things, probably upgrades in my opinion. If you look at the Jeremy Grant versus Aaron Gordon. With the Lakers and with Drummond, if you're possibly playing against a Joel Embiid, if you're going to have to go against Jokic, like, a Drummond will be very impactful because it makes them guard on the other end. It makes them have to deal with other things. So whenever you're fighting for a championship, and Matt knows this, it's about having all the possible puzzle pieces, all the chess pieces. Like, okay, because we remember in the Houston series, Dwight Howard didn't play much for the Lakers, but then he played a ton against Jokic. So it's all about matchups, and you want to have all the possible pieces so that you can weather whatever storm regardless of matchups.
Well, let's look at it this way, too. Clearly, the Lakers need help right now, right? Because AD is going to be out another couple of weeks. LeBron may be out to the end of April, right? They need help, as much help as possible. They've gotten a couple of wins here against teams that they were better than, and they should get wins again against. So that helps in the immediacy of it. When AD's in the lineup, we know AD, even though he played 60% of his possessions at center, doesn't love playing the center position, right? He'd prefer to have a big man like a Dwight or JaVale there. And everybody knows you put LeBron with any big man who can roll to the rim and finish at the rim, and that's going to be a plus situation there, too.
No, it's going to be a great situation, but every single thing that we're referencing, though, is predicated on 100% health. If we're talking about the Brooklyn Nets and them winning a championship, that means KD and their entire roster is healthy. Lakers the same. There's so many teams that it's like, okay, we know Joel Embiid, possible MVP, like, we need him to be 100% healthy. All those things being equal, I still think it goes Lakers, Nets, and then we start lining up.
One thing we're not talking about either is this defensive front line with Drummond and AD and LeBron. That's going to be a hell of a defensive front line come playoff time.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, let's look at some of the possible star-studded lineups the Lakers and Nets could roll out as they potentially face each other. So, Richard, who's the better team on paper, Brooklyn or LA?
I think on paper, it's the Brooklyn Nets. They have more talent. But one thing that everybody knows, especially if you saw the Clippers last year and the discussions, whether it was pre their collapse or post their collapse, was a lot of chemistry issues. That's why they went out and got a point guard, because chemistry plays a huge part. Even the Milwaukee Bucks, there was conversations about they just didn't really want to be in the bubble. They didn't really like it, and it was just they couldn't really kind of get themselves together. So I look at the Lakers team, and they have the chemistry. Most of their pieces are back from the championship year. So I think the Nets are more talented, but the Lakers, with their chemistry, that's their one advantage.
I agree 100%. On paper, if you look at all the individual accolades that the Brooklyn Nets have acquired, it's off the charts. We've probably never seen a team with this many individual accolades. But like RJ said, to me, incorporating one piece is a lot easier than incorporating a handful of pieces, which Brooklyn is having to do. And like I said, Drummond is not someone who demands the ball. Drummond is going to do all the little things and still put up numbers. And the Lakers' core is back where they built a lot of that chemistry.
Well, and I thought your point, Matt, earlier about just the size, right? And these are contrasting styles. The Lakers are not a great three-point shooting team, but they will bludgeon you. And we saw that last year in the bubble. Like, how much of that do you think, though, can be a huge factor if these two teams meet in the playoffs?
It's going to be big. You know, it's going to be really big, and it's hard to go against that trio you have over in Brooklyn, but then it's also you got the best duo over in LA. Right. You know what I mean? And a lot of Kuzma's playing really well. Caldwell Pope, these guys are playing well. Schroeder's playing well. It's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. And the one thing that if you're the Lakers, what you have to do is you have to limit possessions. If you're just saying hypothetically you're playing against the Nets, this is a finals preview.
You don't want to get in this kind of game with them.
You don't want to get in this kind of game, and you want to limit offensive rebounds because offensive rebounds for them means more three-pointers. And so you almost want to force the Brooklyn Nets to have to play big because you can hurt them on the glass, and that's why they needed LaMarcus Aldridge. They needed because let's say hypothetically they were to play against the Lakers, even without Drummond, the Lakers are still a huge team. So, like, you can already see teams, and you look at Embiid, and you see them having to go against Embiid. And Joe Harris, we didn't even mention Joe Harris. Joe Harris wasn't even in the damn graphic, and he's the best shooter in the league right now, and has been one of the top 5 shooters over the past 3 seasons.
Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, still here with Brian Windhorst, Monica McNutt. Monica, you cover the college game. Who do you think Dallas takes at number 1?
I think this is an easy one. It's Texas's Charlie Collier with their number 1 pick. I mean, Charlie's terrific. She's got great size. And going into the NCAA tournament, she had 17 double-doubles. That was 3rd in D1. And she almost broke the internet earlier this year when she dropped 44 points in a contest. And it's really been tremendous to see Charlie kind of continue to grow and mature. I had an opportunity to cover her a little bit as a freshman. And I remember Karen Aston saying at the time, if she can ever get coordinated and in shape, she's going to be a problem, and it looks like she managed to do that.
He looks plenty of both of those things to me, just saying. All right, moving on to the defending champs in the NBA, the LA Lakers. They're going to be getting a boost tonight. Coach Frank Vogel says Andre Drummond is a go after suffering a torn toenail, which just means his entire toenail came all the way off, people. That was in his Lakers debut. He missed the last 3 games after that. Vogel has made it clear Drummond is the starting center. Well, where does that leave Marc Gasol? Gasol, of course, started in Drummond's absence. He said last week the Drummond signing was, quote, a tough pill to swallow. Really seemed down about it in a press conference with reporters after it happened, but he seemed to change his tune after the Lakers game Tuesday. Here's our Dave McMenamin with the question and Gasol's answer.
Mark, statistically, this is one of your better stretches, if not your best stretch since joining the Lakers, and it comes at a time where another center is going to be most likely healthy on this trip and playing. What can you do to keep the momentum or continue to impact the game if there's less playing?
I'll stay ready. I'm going to tell you this. I'm fully committed to the team. I'll stay ready. When my number is called, I understand. We have to get Andre acclimated to what we try to do. We have to get back. Our 2, main guys, Bron and AD, whenever they come back, and we have to get that group going and get some chemistry going with the first unit for them. I'll be ready, no matter what happens, no matter if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, at the whatever position. If it's some nights I might not play, but I'll stay ready no matter what.
So that was pretty different from what we heard from him a few days earlier, Brian. Do you feel he's just had time to work through this and is a genuine change of heart here?
Yeah, that sounds like the pro that I know Marc Gasol to be. What he was saying last week was kind of surprising because we knew for weeks that there was a good chance Andre Drummond was going to be a Laker. Maybe he was surprised he was just given the starting job. But, let's talk about two pieces of reality for the Lakers. One is that they really need offense right now without AD and LeBron. They just struggle, and Andre Drummond can bring more offense at this point than Marc Gasol can, and that's a driving factor. In addition to the fact they had to compete to get him, and they had to promise him the starting job to get him to sign with the Lakers. The second thing is this: really, the goal for Drummond or Gasol is to force the Lakers to have to play them in the postseason. What I mean by that is, when the chips are down, the expectation is that it's going to be Anthony Davis playing center for the Lakers, and they're going to go with more of a perimeter-based shooting lineup. Either of these guys, whether it's Drummond or Gasol, needs to play so well at both ends of the court that they force Frank Vogel's hand, and that'll be the challenge for them going forward.
Yeah, Wendy, you're absolutely right. And, when I first heard this quote, I was like, Marc Gasol, you do not have enough cachet to be whining about playing time. But then now I kind of understand why he may have said that. I think sometimes we penalize athletes for being honest, even though he knew all of those things potentially, Wendy, that you just talked about. And even though his numbers this season are a fraction of what his career numbers are overall, it still hurts a little bit, right? Like, these athletes still take a ton of pride in what they do and the opportunities that they're given. But now he's done a full circle in terms of getting on board to whatever the formula is going to be to get the Lakers another ring. And I'm certain that he wants one of those. So good answer from him. And I just, I agree with you, Wendy. Both of these guys want to be on the floor. And so he's got to have the right attitude to do that. That's the first step.
And Frank Vogel said that he has sat him down, that they have had a conversation. And Frank stressed to him, look at the playoffs last year. He can say, we played Dwight Howard a lot in X series or Y series. We moved JaVale McGee here in X series or Y series. And then, we pulled them back in other series where other guys were more effective. He said, you're not always going to be plan A. Now, Marc Gasol's initial reaction to that was, but I'm not even plan B or C. I'm more like plan D. But I think you can see in his face and his voice as of yesterday, he's realized that there are places for him to make an impact.